Isles. One beloved station, Radio Cayman.
The voice.
The heart. The soul of the Cayman Islands.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Trust and pray that you're enjoying the weather on the outside. It is indeed good snuggle weather. Some of us wish we were where we wanted to be, but we are where we are, so let's make, the best of it. Going to be honored to have the company once again of my good friend, Mr. Leonard Tilbert, as we endeavor to make it a thoughtful Thursday. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. And first and foremost, may I say that publicly our prayers that you will be safe wherever you are, and if you're on the road, that you'll be very mindful and considerate, careful and cautious, and understanding that if you want to arrive safe, it's probably best to be sensible. And to my good friend, Mr. Leonard, good afternoon, my friend. How are you today, sir?
I'm well. I'm glad to be here. Took some doing to get here, but but we are here.
I look at days like today, and perhaps for some of us, when we first arose, the sun was brightly shining, as they say, and then as it, the hours wane, you could see that the rain was in the cards. Kind of wish, we could be where we wanted to be, but we are where we are.
Indeed.
So let's make the most of it and be,
took the words out of my mouth.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'm always of the mind that we need to be not just grateful but gracious. We need to recognize and reflect that the space in which we occupy should matter, and we should make a meaningful contribution. And in extracting something, ask ourselves, are we giving more to the situation that we're taking? And there are some of us that are so willing to give and so consciously give that I wonder if they ever recognize that they may come to a space where they pour from an empty cup. And to the counselor, who's counseling the counselor, to the guards, who's guarding the guards, but to the giver, who is giving.
Yes, one has to learn to receive as well as to give, right?
Yeah. I think
otherwise, as you say, you face the empty cup syndrome.
I've been reflecting on that, and part of our impetus, I guess, in our discussions about Thursdays being, I used to say thankful, but also be thoughtful. And in the past, when people say, is the cup half empty or half full? I say, man, just be glad that, you have something in the cup. And then when you realize that you are probably at risk of pouring from empty cup, can you be thankful that you do have a cup from which possibly can pour from? But that's
put something else back into.
Put something else back into, right? So having that, Mr. Bush, as the premier, as a political leader, used to say, we shouldn't go with cap in hand. But I'm thinking if you have a cup in hand, you have something to be the repository of, So having a cup is a good first start.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, like the vessel.
Especially if it's a well-made cup.
One that,
Not a cup that leaks. Because all that is possible.
And a cup that is, very much respected, not only for what it does, but for perhaps how it was made, and who handled it.
That too.
And I don't think many times that we value the cup. We see it and we discard it. Gone are the days where you had literally the physical metal cup. The water was that much sweeter. Now we discard it because it's not porcelain, it's not china or fine gold. Right?
Aye.
It was dinged and dented, but it was well worn, like a good cast iron pan, well seasoned. Nothing better than a good cup.
I suppose. Yeah. We left off last time. So that 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
I think I misinformed our listeners on a small but important matter. I was talking about Bloomsday being the commemoration of the publication of James Joyce's Odyssey. And unfortunately identified the Bloomsday as being June 14th, when in fact it is today.
16th?
Yes, okay. 16th. If I had been a better organized person, I would have had something. I would have had something to read.
You missed the DSUP.
To join the that too. To join the readings that go on Bloomsday around the world, and today being especially celebrated because it's 100 years since the publication, and that was a groundbreaking publication in the sense that it changed the format of the novel as well as the content in some ways. Initially, along with what's his name, the great English poet D.H. Lawrence, along with his later Chatterley's Lover, also banned initially as containing obscenities and such. And of course, subsequently, that has been put very much by the way. And this year is also the 50th anniversary of the publication of Crow by Tate Hughes, which again was a significant publication. But I say all that partly possibly to put a little bit more at ease those who may form the impression that I am at odds with the English canon, which I very much am not. I couldn't really be a writer in English and take that position. But be that as it may, those two celebrations are there to be commemorated. Anyone who wishes to take it up. In fact, if you went online now, you'd probably find readings going on all over the place for Bloomsday. But I thought I would actually change our format a little bit this time around. I thought maybe I would start off by reading a couple of pieces and then we get into discussion thereafter. Hopefully the power on my device here holds out. I can have enough power to do the reading. Why don't I start with this one? It's called, where is it now? Oh, for some pie in the sky. I don't think I read that last time, did I? No. Okay. In fact, I was my key listener and critic and helper, my good wife, questioned me afterwards, why didn't you read that one? So, here's to her. The title I have on it is Opining for a Slice of Pie in the Sky. This came out of a recent conversation when a prominent politician responded to something I was saying by referring to using the term pie in the sky. And I have heard that term so many times in response to things said in the context of working in government service that I thought, maybe I should respond to this somehow. so pining for a slice of pie in the sky. Oh, I do love some sky pie, steamed, baked, souped up, or fried fancy. When you see how people have cried and the ruler has lied, it will make you just as hungry. It will stoke fire in your belly. You'll start a sky pie dance party, sharing pie slices, while slicing the sky using the healing sword of justice. Peace? Peace? There will be no peace. Not for us, manacled as destiny makers, while half-truth tellers and prophet takers bind the pied sky with barbed wire. But watch us as we take time, roll it out in a crust, then stuff it truthfully with a blue bluff of sky pie. For what is this pie in the sky, if not the daring of a dream, or a vision waiting in greyed and greying shrouds of wisdom?
You know, not just use a metaphor, but the fact that we are so quick to condemn, oh, that is a pipe dream, we say to an aspiring athlete, or to what otherwise should be a vision, just a pie in the sky. And because of that dismissive approach, how many times have we quelled innovation?
You can kill people's spirit with that kind of response, depending on how strong they are, what other resources they have, what kind of support they have. Yes, that, I guess, is testimony to how powerful language is, how much of an impact it can have on people. And we embody those kinds of catchphrases with lots of meaning, lots of potency. Everybody sort of endorses a term like that, and it gains currency. Once it has gained that kind of currency, then it has power.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what it means. Everybody knows exactly what import it's supposed to have.
But as you, sorry.
No, I suppose I'm just using it as evidence of the power of language, an unfortunate manifestation in some ways, but it has its place too. If you are needing to, I suppose, put somebody in their place who is really out of order, then some of those kinds of phrases can do the job.
But even in that context, especially in public utterances from public officials and the like, pie in the sky becomes sort of expected. But look at two other phrases, you know, with elephant and elephant in the room. Yet we say those, but we don't seem to ascribe the same level of importance, the same level of conviction that we would when we say that, especially to the allegation of the politician building this thing that turns out to be a white elephant. We let it go by the wayside without any accountability.
Well,
you know, and then
I think that suggests to me that the problem really lies with the accountability systems themselves. The means of reaching that person who is essentially conducting themselves in an irresponsible way. Because the white elephant obviously is, by definition, a waste of public resources. And given that it's in the nature of public resources that they come, especially in a case like ours, definitely from a regressive system where the poor essentially are paying proportionally more than the rich. And it's particularly painful when you see that kind of situation and public funds being wasted, because it really means that you're taking poor people's money and throwing it away, you know, which is not exactly something to be proud of.
But it comes back to, you said, the systems that we employ and historically understand to fail to hold people accountable, right?
Yes.
And as I listen, I recognize that through the arts, whether it's poetry or good calypso, there's so much that can be said, and yet we don't take it on board. And the utterance from, again, just because it's the one thing that affects us all, from the political leadership, if that is so influential, so charismatic, with such a a hold, as it were, that affects all of our lives, whether we vote or don't vote.
Indeed.
Right? And yet, we're not
system of governance.
The system of governance. All right. Is that a break, Mrs. Susan, that you want us to take? And if we refuse, we have no choice. All right, my good friend Leonard Dilbert will sit with us when we return. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
The Department of Labor and Pensions reminds employers and employees that the pensions holiday ends on June 30th. The deduction of pension contributions resume on July 1st, and the payment of the mandatory 10% pension contributions is due by the 15th of the following month.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Puritan Cleaners.
Puritan Cleaners, now using the most popular and eco-friendly cleaning solvents. 2 convenient locations to serve you: Savannah Countryside and Eastern Avenue, Georgetown. Drive-through, rain or shine, free pickup and delivery services available. Call Puritan Cleaners, 949-7104. Also ask about our in-house discounts. Puritan Cleaners, you feel good when you look good.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. The current pension holiday is set to expire this June 30th. Employers and employees will be required to recommence the legally specified pension contributions effective with July earnings. If you have any questions or concerns, please visit our website at chamberpension.ky or contact us at admin@pensions.ky. The Chamber Pension Plan, representing large and small employers in all sectors of Cayman's economy.
If you care about your car's performance and fuel economy, you must fill up at Jose's Escape with the new Pure 93. Experts know that the higher the octane rating, the better your engine will perform. Pure 93 is the highest octane fuel available in Cayman. Protect your car against pre-ignition and engine knocks. Top up your tank now with Pure 93 at Jose's Rubis and enter to win an awesome track bike. But there's more. Jose's offers 2 lateral flow test kits for only $10. The best KN95 masks, 2 for $5. And 10 stylish black surgical masks are only $5. Share the love. Purchase Reflections gift certificates and enter to win the amazing Trek bike.
On a Listen to This, the Jubilee festivities continue with Lukia. Celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and Mango Season. On Saturday, 18th of June, the Cayman Islands National Museum is hosting a fun, interactive event full of Caymanian cuisine, entertainment, shopping, and free museum tours. And don't forget about the mangoes with the annual mango peeling and eating competition.
What are you doing with that big Julie mango in your hand now? I want a piece. No!
The Queen's Platinum Jubilee continues with Mango Season at the museum, Saturday, 18th of June. For more details, visit museum.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And I think Susan has a special camera that she can look on outside and predict when it has rained. She can't tell you when it rained. So if you're outside in the rain, enjoy it. In the studio, we are certainly blessed with the excellent company of Mr. Leonard Dilbert. On a thoughtful Thursday, you reference, reminding people today is Bloomsday.
Yes.
And I say this carefully because I think part and parcel of what we need to look at as a people is the willingness for us to engage in discussion, to read or to listen to something, and for those who prefer to watch, that technology exists, and to take from that an understanding and to formulate an opinion, and without being adamant and dogmatic, to sit and, come let us reason. And for many of us, just to listen to a presentation, it's almost as if we don't have the attention span,
Yeah, that's in many ways a matter of training. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily something that you sort of natural grow with.
Right.
If you, well, in the old days they used to talk about children being seen and not heard. Well, I took that to heart to the extent that I was not even seen, let alone heard, and learned a lot from sitting on the table while adults were talking around the table. But it's a skill, and it takes cultivation, it takes practice. And one of the things I value about poetry is the way in which it helps to keep that skill sharp. Because if you don't really listen, you're not going to get it. A lot of people say they don't get contemporary poetry anyway, and that again is a matter of not being taught how to listen to it or how to read it. And speaking of which, I omitted to do my usual before I read that pie in the sky bit, because I used the term the ruler, as you probably notice. Anybody who's listening, notice that. And just want to insert that I should have, as I try to do anytime I'm using any kind of keyword sort of thing, or code word, if you will, explain it beforehand. And in this case, I am using, in recent times, I've been using the term ruler the way Machiavelli uses the prince, to mean the current power base sort of thing, whether that is in one hand or it is in the hands of an oligarchy, or it is in the hands of an oligarchy plus the political elected leaders or whatever, which is probably closer to our case. So, I mean, all of them.
Yeah. And I'm glad
all of those who have power and need to take responsibility for it.
And I'm glad that you made a point to emphasize and to explain that to us. I've now stepped back to ask, well, why did I infer that? Is it because the word ruler in itself has that natural connotation? Had you used it in the form where the context indicated that it would be a form of measurement in terms of distance?
Yeah. No, I think it's, I'm assuming it's clear that it's referring to the person in a position of power in a governance structure.
Right.
But I guess what I wanted to be clear about was that I mean it to be not necessarily an individual, because the ruler could very much come across like a single person. Just like you could say Queen Elizabeth is the ruler of the Commonwealth, for argument's sake. Right? But that's not what I mean it. I mean it to be a term that is elastic. And in our case, the elasticity wraps itself around the power base that we exist under, which is not just the cabinet and the other branches of government, but also those who are in positions of significant influence, mostly because they have wealth and influence.
Isn't it interesting that word ruler is almost expected to be singular, and it does not have as a negative connotation as despot or some other word, right? And yet,
which is partly my tactic, right? To use a neutral term, but in a way that can bounce around and do all sorts of different things, and create a bit of mischief. Because one of the necessities, if you're going to speak truth to power, as they say, is to be mischievous. You can't be satirical and that without mischief being written in.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best tools because it creates laughter. It lifts people's spirits a little bit in relation to their way of being in the world against that ruler and the way the ruler is against them, because that inevitably happens. It's not going to represent you all the time and represent you the way you want to be represented all the time.
Yeah. Someone remarked to me just recently again, isn't it interesting that the time in which we live, we get more intellect, knowledge and timely information from our stand-up comedians than we do from our news media. Right.
Well, yeah, the news media is rather compromised, I would say, in general. The big media houses are so big. Their investment in the status quo is just too large. They can't really avoid being co-opted.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's read Michel's, the sociologist, will understand that this is what happens. When you get to a certain size, this is what happens. You become part of the system that you are involved in.
Not unlike the discussion we had in 2008, 2009, when it was said in the media, are some of these financial institutions too large to fail? Now, I have a different take.
It's a similar kind of argument. Yeah.
But yet the word cabal, seen as plural and not necessarily complementary.
Oh no, the cabal is not meant to be complementary.
Right.
It's an old term for a conspiracy. Or a set of conspirators, I should say.
Yeah. And when we look at let's just use OPEC for instance. Not long ago, when we saw them in words like cartel, and other words were being used, some were offended.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
The banking cartel, the drugs cartel.
Well, the terms weren't meant to be complementary.
Right. And it brings us back to the arts, poetry in particular. Even in there's a difference between, in my mind, calypso and soca, and the commentary that you will find in the calypsonian. If you listen closely, there's a serious political and social commentary. And is it then, as a people, just like our inability thus far to understand poetry, we don't know how to read it, we don't know how to listen, how to interpret it. Is it then that in our education systems, when we look at it, our approach leaves us wanting? We hear people who can recitate, right? But they do little more than read, research, and regurgitate. They have no semblance of comprehension.
Well, yes, I have a bit of a thing about the way that literature is taught generally, and in our school system, I would say that the evidence is there, speaks for itself. If we had better teaching of literature, we would have better literary comprehension in the community. Right? And it is lacking, and the education system has a lot to answer for, because most people now alive have been through that system. Right? Most people now alive and working here, I mean, right?
Yeah.
And living here have been through that system and have had they're long enough, and there were ample opportunities to have imparted what needs to be imparted, but it doesn't work.
But even in that, and I know that there are many of us that have our favorite readings. There are many of us who may have subscribed to, the classics that say, well, these are the top 100 books that everybody should read. And I keep watching over the years the additions or suggested deletions and the like. And there are some that maybe, depending on the school system, is encouraged, and some that are, you just don't read them. Scarlet Letter, for instance. And then I wonder to what extent the introduction of those books to students, if we're doing it appropriately with respect to the content and the analytical approach that we should have, so that the student now becomes a critical thinker. We just want almost a regurgitation of what was there. And for me, that was a challenge. Don't ask me what I think and then expect me to tell you what you think.
Well, yeah, I mean, literary critique is definitely a fine skill, and you don't get there without putting in the necessary mileage, but it has to be tutored appropriately as well, because literature is a bit of a foreign language.
Yeah.
When the writer starts to create, they have to allow themselves access to all the tools of language, some of which are not going to be available to or practiced by most people. So we talked about coding a little while ago, and the encoding that takes place is something that you therefore have to learn how to unlock it. And it takes practice to be able to gain enough skill to transfer that from one reading to another. So that it applies to anything that you pick up to read, provided it's a new language, of course.
Right. The use of allegory and metaphor becomes...
Yes, there are lots of technical tools for analysis that are helpful for being able to, what they call, scan a poem, for instance, and determine its rhythm pattern, its rhyme pattern, its alliteration, it's all the tools that are in use, right? But it is not, with poetry in particular, you can also get trapped in the technicalities and make so much of them that you actually lose sight of the heart of the beast, as it were.
Yeah, my daughter taught me haiku. I look at this child not in double digits yet and writing haiku, and I go, what is that? And this is where I think introducing our children and giving them the platform. So it's not about examination and grades. It's about understanding and analysis.
Yeah. Now, haiku being a Japanese form, an old Japanese form, I think it's between 15 and 17 syllables that are available for your use, and you essentially usually 3 lines, and that limitation of syllables, and you have to get across what you are trying to get across in that moment, which is it's a fun it's a fun discipline. I've written a few, but it's you can undertake the discipline as an ongoing exercise, and there are people who have chosen to use haiku as their primary mode of expression. I find that it cuts against a couple of things that are important to me as a practitioner. One of them being an engagement with the native tongue, if you will, with our native language, and the imperatives of giving life to that calls for a more expansive approach, calls for more narrative as well. So it works against the use of discipline like haiku.
And this is where, as I listen to you, I'm appreciative that we need to be respectful of the space and place and understand our own vernacular and not be afraid to use our parlance. Let it be a part of who we are. To me, is nothing more beautiful than to be in the place and hearing the people from that place speak. And it doesn't matter if that language is foreign to me, whether it's a dialect that I've not heard. To see them interact, amongst their own, and for some reason we are not willing to do that, even in our private spaces, and certainly less so publicly, because for whatever reason, we have this connotation that.
I think there's a relationship between things like if your own language form is not sufficiently celebrated, I believe you will find that the people in that situation are going to be generally less tolerant of other languages around them, because their own language is not celebrated enough and doesn't have its proper place in the scheme of things. And I would say that certainly our way with English in the Cayman Islands is in that category, not celebrated enough. And my use of it is not what some persons choose to do, which is to try to replicate. One of the dangers in that is that we have such little agreement at the moment on how things are to be represented on the page. We know how they sound, and we can reproduce the sound, but reducing it to the page, reducing it to writing, calls for, well, how are we going to spell it? Right? Are you going to leave out letters? Are you going to have apostrophes, etc.? Because some of those words are compressed words that sound like they don't have certain letters in them, etc. So rather than get into some of those technicalities, some of those traps, my preference has been to that's one reason, but the bigger reason really is to create a kind of interweaving with standard English, to make use of the tools available through standard English, but to interweave with that standard English the tools available to us as native speakers of the language as we use it.
Yeah.
And so if you listen to the things that I've produced, you will find phrases popping up that I hope sound quite natural, sound like they belong there. But if you think about it, you will realize that they don't really belong there because they're out of context. They're not standard English phrases, so they don't really belong in a standard English context. But it has enough congruence with the surroundings that it retains its validity.
Yeah. All right. I watched with Susan and ignore.
Yeah, was Signal.
Yeah. All right. We'll go where she leads us, and if that road takes us.
Late to stop now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll pause. When we return, we'll be here. Stay tuned.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Subway is giving you flavor around the clock with the new Chicken Squad sandwich options. Try the classic chicken and bacon ranch, the sweet and savory barbecue chicken, or the chicken cordon bleu. 3 new appetizing and delicious sub options that you can also make into a wrap. The Chicken Squad is available at Subway for only a limited time. Subway, giving you something to cluck about.
On a Listen to This, the Jubilee festivities continue with Lukia. Celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and Mango Season. On Saturday, 18th of June, the Cayman Islands National Museum is hosting a fun, interactive event full of Caymanian cuisine, entertainment, shopping, and free museum tours. And don't forget about the mangoes with the annual mango peeling and eating competition.
What you doing with that big Julie mango in your hand now? I want a piece. No!
The Queen's Platinum Jubilee continues with Mango Season at the museum, Saturday, 18th of June. For more details, visit museum.ky.
Cayman, get ready for Blossom Premium All-Inclusive. Come enjoy ambience, sweet soca music, and a star-powered cast featuring Edwin Yearwood. Vashti, Red Plastic Bag. Erica Asai and Show Wayne Winchester. Thursday, 30th June at the National Gallery. Party time 7 p.m. to midnight. Dress code light cocktail attire. Blossom Premium All-Inclusive for KMS Carnival, a production of Calabra and SW Limited.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecast, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
From Radio Cayman's newsroom, I'm Shanda Gallego with your latest news. Public Health reports 134 COVID-19 cases for Monday and Tuesday. There are 966 estimated active cases of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands. There is one new case in the Sister Islands. Active cases there are currently at 17. The 7-day rolling average for June 15th is 65. In international news, the leaders of 4 European Union nations visited Ukraine on Thursday, vowing to back Kyiv's bid to become an official candidate to join the bloc in a high-profile show of support for the country fending off a Russian invasion. The French president also promised Ukraine 6 more powerful truck-mounted artillery guns, the latest in a new round of Western arms pledges for Ukraine as the war grinds on in the eastern Donbass region. As the Supreme Court appears on track to overturn the constitutional right to abortion, progressive prosecutors around the U.S. are declaring they won't enforce some of the most restrictive and punitive anti-abortion laws the GOP-led states have waited years to implement. The move is sure to rankle Republican lawmakers and governors, with about half the states poised to ban abortion if Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision establishing a constitutional right to abortion, is weakened or overturned. And UK interest rates have risen further as the Bank of England attempts to stem the pace of soaring prices. Rates have increased from 1% to 1.25%, the 5th consecutive rise, pushing them to the highest level in 13 years. It comes as finances are being squeezed by the rising cost of living, driven by record fuel and energy prices. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh. If you care about your car's performance and fuel economy, you must fill up at Jose's Escape with the new Pure 93. Experts know that the higher the octane rating, the better your engine will perform. Pure 93 is the highest octane fuel available in Cayman. Protect your car against pre-ignition and engine knocks. Top up your tank now with Pure 93 at Jose's Rubis and enter to win an awesome track bike. But there's more. Jose's offers 2 lateral flow test kits for only $10. The best KN95 masks, 2 for $5. And 10 stylish black surgical masks are only $5. Share the love. Purchase Reflections gift certificates and enter to win the amazing Trek bike.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us, and thanks too to Mr. Leonard Dilbert for joining us. And as we're going to have these discussions fortnightly.
Yes.
Every
yes, they have to suffer us for a little bit.
All right. Well, it's going to be fun, man, because I'm learning a lot.
Aye.
We have a call online. Take the call. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon. I think you're talking about poetry this evening or this afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I heard the word contemporary
yes,
poetry mentioned. I don't believe either of you ever went to Mrs. school, or could be wrong. Maybe
I actually did, Mr. Loxley.
You did?
I did.
How long did you go to her school?
I went there for, I don't remember, I think 3 years.
Yeah.
And then transferred to West Bay Primary, as was at the time, in the town hall.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, you're talking about contemporary poetry. Would be related to, let's say, 1603, 1703, 1803, 1903, or 2003?
No, that's the term being used. It's not my term. It's a term in common use among critics and writers generally to talk about poetry of, I guess you would call it the modern age, 20th century, late 19th century onwards.
I don't know whether you heard this one before, but let me just read you some. You can put it in whatever category.
Mm-hmm.
We can put it in whatever category we want.
Sure.
Okay. Tit for tat, butter for fish. You play with the mermaid, and I'll make my wish. Walk on the beach, gaze at the stars. Close your eyes. See the wonder of where you are. Cayman in full view. Ever ask ourselves, or if we ever knew, the words of the wise man as he bid us adieu. Willie, my boy, don't let them take it from you. End.
Okay. Did it have a title on it, sir?
Well, does it have a title on it?
Uh-huh.
I guess you could say, you put in the title you want on it.
Okay. No, I mean, that's fair enough. Often enough you come across poems that are untitled. And you were looking for a comment on that, or?
Yeah, I was just looking for a comment on it.
Well, it's an interesting mix of things, I find. It has, obviously, some colloquial elements, and it has, I would say it works towards a clearly defined rhyme scheme, but it ends up doing what happens sometimes when people try to establish a set rhyme scheme, and their control of the phrasing might fail them, and they end up essentially cramming more words into the line than actually belong there. So you have to read a bit faster when you read that line in order to make the rhyme fit, because you've created a sentence that really has too many words in it to fit into that particular rhythmic pattern and still end with the end rhyme. So there are things like that going on within it that make it interesting, and it obviously would be easier to comment if you could have sight of it and be able to engage in a more in-depth analysis. But
well, did the last two lines ring a bell with you?
Read them again for me, please.
Really, my boy, don't let them take it from you.
No, that does not ring a bell with me.
Okay.
All right. If I can ask, you referenced Miss Iz's school. Was that, for those of us who don't know, was that poem part of recitation that was expected of him?
Well, no, but I think it was it's a kind of offspring of what some of the really basic things that she instills, you know. And are you familiar with the last two lines?
When I heard and I listened intently, I was asking myself, what was the author, who's the author, and what's the origin of it, and did the last two bit have the political overtures referring to our legislator of the day?
Or what?
Was it referring to the Mr. Willie Farrington?
Well, that's who Willie is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And and we go back up two lines or three lines.
Mm.
If we ever knew the words of a wise man as he bid us adieu.
Mm-hmm.
Really, my boy, don't let them take
it from you. Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave.
Yeah. But what is happening there, I would say, sir, is that the same thing that happens in a lot of what people call confessional poetry. Not that I would say that this is in that category, but people use references that are known to a certain readership or a certain cohort of people. But if you're not part of that group that shares that particular knowledge, then it means nothing to you, other than the words themselves. And the words themselves don't have the staying power or the impact on you that they would have with somebody who knows what you're referring to. So that is, that's a challenge to be overcome. If you want the general listener to get from it what the persons who are familiar with it would get from it, you have to give them a little bit more information.
But we're talking. I think we talked to the Cayman Islands community, more or less, and some of those words have been in the community exposure or for at least I don't know how long. I'd say at least 100, 150 years, and maybe the last two lines. Really, my boy, don't let him take it from you. I guess.
But if you
probably within the last 60 years. So, does that fit into contemporary with what's going on in the community today?
Well, the term contemporary isn't really a reference to Cayman per se. It's a international terminology, and my frame of reference personally isn't directed towards the Cayman Islands community exclusively. It's what I think someone writing poetry, whether in the Cayman Islands or anywhere else, would need to try to do is to use the language in a way that is easily translatable, easily seen through by anyone who is familiar with the English language. I think that is the challenge. So that if you have a Caymanian content subject matter, you make it available to anybody anywhere who can read English or can understand English if they hear it. But even so, even what you're saying about the last 60 years, I would bet you, sir, that if you were to ask a young person now about that phrasing, those lines, they would not have a clue what you're talking about. And I don't think they would not have a clue what you're talking about. I don't think that it would be fair of us to expect them to have the clue. If we have the knowledge that is encoded in those words, then the job is for us to do. If you're writing it or presenting it to them, the job is for us to do, to give them a way into it so that they can really get what they're talking about. Otherwise, essentially, you've coded it in a way that is hidden from them, and I don't think that's the objective that you want to arrive at.
Well, could we use poetry? Can poetry be used to do what you just described in, I guess, your last 6-7 sentences?
Well, I hope so.
Oh. Okay.
All right. Hey, thanks very much, sir. Thanks very much. And with the discussion, let's take the other caller. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, my lady. How are you?
Good afternoon.
It's fine. The weather is not too, conducive, but we good.
The weather is good, man. Just depending on what you want to do. You want to clean your gut.
I'm not going on a road, and I'm going. I am not going.
All right. I'm just saying. I mean, perspective, right? All right. Good to hear you laugh.
But this
he's talking about flying a plastic kite.
I'm not following you either.
Or sitting in a hammock and reading? I mean...
I'm not following, no.
Right.
No. But I'm just saying, 3 wonderful, wonderful minds, in my humble opinion. To me, this is surely a town hall moment. And I mean, look here, we are right here in Georgia. I mean, I ain't got no town hall no more.
You'll be here, sir.
I would try to force me the corner.
Okay.
I ain't got no town hall no more. We got better call a contradiction or something. Anyway, I've got little, waves of sugar plum cookies in my head, and I can work on that because I'm enjoying it. Believe me.
All for you. All right.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Yeah. You really, this is needed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And as the caller shares certain things, you're talking about encoding, and we do speak in code a lot. And for many of us, it's lost, one, on the generations, but it's also lost on others who come and not quite understand the language, the unspoken language. And like the technical use of poetry, you just gave us a sort of academic exercise. Well, the reading speed, the amount of words in it, and like haiku, it's very structured, very disciplined, and it took me my single digit dollar.
It can be in when you use the term discipline. Any writing that's worth reading involves significant discipline. There's what's 90-something thousand words in the English language or whatever, and you have to figure out which ones of those
and nuances.
Which ones of those you're going to use, how they're going to jump up against one another,
yeah,
or whatever the relationship is, so that in the end it conveys something of what is given to you to put forth. But the discipline that I was referring to there is the discipline that you impose on yourself. If you decide that you're going to write in a way that involves rhyming of the lines, and it's going to have a certain rhythm to it. Typically, in our experience, what we have treasured, what has been part of our literary heritage has been a fixation, how to call it, on the iambic pentameter with various arrangements of end rhymes on the lines. And that is demanding discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Many people who attempt to apply that discipline to writing a poem find that they end up in exactly the situation I was just describing, where
mm-hmm.
you have a phrase you want to use because that phrase conveys the terminology that you think says the things that you want to say. But in order to fit into the line,
mm-hmm.
those words have to be sped up, right? Because there are too many words there to actually fit.
Right.
The further discipline that ought to be undertaken in that situation is to look at those words and say, well, how am I going to say this thing or something similar to it that doesn't involve all these words?
The use of the
I need to take something out
Yeah.
in order for the rhythm to be what it is, if that's the rhythm that I've chosen.
Right.
Because the reader hears the rhythm going along, then all of a sudden there's this line that throws them off, and he's listening now to the mistake, if you will, right? To the jamming up of those words, and now you lost them.
The punch, yeah. All right. We do have a caller. Leonard Dilbert is our guest. Good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Good afternoon to you, Sterling.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Pretty good, How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm blessed, man. And when I look in the mirror, I see a face that I enjoy.
Boy, that's good, boy. I'm telling you.
You gotta love yourself, man.
Especially if you go anybody else who tell you it too, you know what I mean?
Thank you for the compliment, man.
Yeah, man. And good afternoon to Mr. Dilbert.
Good afternoon, sir.
Cousin Dilbert, I should say.
Okay.
Well, I just call him because really the last caller triggered it. And I had to jump in my car because the good Lord sent what we call a squall.
Mm-hmm.
And it nearly took out some things that were near us, and I had to run out and go help pull down some stuff. And so I was driving home, go change my shoes so I don't take a cold, like the old people say,
mm-hmm.
Because I got kind of wet. And I was driving, and I must tell you that interaction with Mr. Banks. Good afternoon, Mr. Banks, because I know you're listening. I just happened to have seen him just really 3 days ago, and him and I were having a little brief interaction on what the place name by the fish shop there, by the four-way stop, Pakistan.
Yeah.
And I was just really calling to say, I don't know what the topic is because that's where I chimed in, but that was very educational exchange that you had with him, Mr. Dilbert.
Thank you.
And then the caller afterwards. I hope we never lose that interaction. I'm younger than all of you all, but I consider myself to go between generations. You know, I'm old.
We can all claim that in some way.
Fair enough. But I didn't, and I wasn't saying that to be, but I was actually saying I'm old enough because you had that exchange about 60 years old and younger and understanding.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough. I'm of the generation that understands and saw a little bit of Cayman, because while I know what the back house is, because my grandmother had one as a little boy, I never had to use it.
Right.
And I'm old enough to chime in and know what it is to go on social media.
Yes.
And so I just really called to say that was such, like the caller said, a powerful, what was the word she used? Hall moment, community moment.
Yeah.
And I hope we never lose that. I don't know what the topic was today, but I hope we never lose that, because it was just enjoyable listening to all of you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for chatting.
We're talking about poetry, and I should say for the record, I value Mr. Banks's efforts in the arts generally, on the radio, and in music, and particularly in a particular epoch of music as far as Cayman's attachment to the music coming in on the airwaves. Just say that for the record.
Yeah, may I quickly ask, since you gone there about poetry, because I've always wondered, and I heard the interaction you were having. Can my question would be, can anyone write poetry? Or is
everybody needs to answer that question for themselves.
Well, is it?
It is potentially, it is possible, but I think, as we were just talking about, the disciplines involved in writing poetry. Anyone can use language, obviously, as long as they have the power of speech. And I have to remind myself to say that kind of thing, because it's easy to take for granted the fact that we all speak, but because we don't all speak, right? There are deaf mutes among us, and there are who use sign language, which is another powerful thing to be talking about. There's a whole set of people who are now working in sign language and writing poetry in sign language.
Oh, wow.
So it's a powerful medium in itself. But for those of us who speak, you and therefore would be relying on the ancient form of poetry, which is the spoken word. The poetry was originally a spoken art, and even the way that the Bible is composed, the way that the ancient epics of different cultures were composed, they were composed by people who spoke or sang the epics of those cultures, and at some point those that lasted have been written down and passed on in writing, but they were originally verbal, and so poetry is essentially a verbal form. So anybody who can speak, you could say, potentially could write a poem. But when you attempt to do it, is when you discover that you've really started on the journey. Your first attempt to do it, I suspect, is not going to be something that you want to try to publish. But one thing to bear in mind in that respect is that you don't write many successful poems on the basis of sitting down to say, I am going to write a poem about this because I think it needs to have a poem written about it. Typically, I would say that your experience of writing poetry is a spiritual experience. It's an experience that you gain from being open to signals that appear to you from you don't know where, as far as how the language combines itself, the kinds of things that strike you, that create that combination of language that starts the process. But it doesn't just come out of the blue. It's a practice. I think this is the crucial point to make. Poetry writing is a practice, and I speak of myself as being a practicing poet because I think that is the only way legitimately to speak about writing poetry. You have to practice it. You have to practice constantly, otherwise it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to ask, I mean, hearing that, and then also your exchange with Mr. Banks, where you talked about rhyme, Are there certain elements that constitutes, and does the length of whether you're writing it, reading it, or whatever they're saying it, are there certain elements that make something poetry? And forgive my ignorance there, but you talked about.
Well, I'm going after your call is finished. I'm going to read one of mine, which is in a bit of a rough stage. I would say it's an early draft, but I'll read it because I am prepared to stand by it for the time being. But you can see what you make of that, because a lot of the things that would go into writing poetry traditionally, in terms of the rhythm of the lines, the way that you use rhyme and various other tools, there are lots of technical things that you could learn. But you can the simplest way to approach it is to think about it like you're writing a song. And it's much more, you get a lot more freedom to put down the words in a way that you can feel less inhibited about it. If you feel like you're just writing a song, and you're writing a song that you're going to sing to somebody, sort of thing, and follow your instincts. But to get into the technicalities, we could spend a lot of time, many hours, going through the technicalities that are available in terms of writing poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your call. Have a lovely day, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Thank you too.
Thank you very much. I know we have a break. Do we have time for the call first, Ms. Susan, and then the break? All right. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello. Good afternoon.
That young person who just called, as long, my friend, as you old enough to remember who a Watertown Hall is or used to be. You're good with me. I call you the fill in the gap generation. I can't remember what you called yourself. But once you can fill the gap, my friend, you're good. You're good because, like the old sage just said, we are all in that position. You good once you can fill the gap. So have a nice day.
Thank you.
And I want, after we return.
So we're breaking now?
Yes, sir. And then would you be so kind as to share with us your early draft?
The same piece.
All right. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Ransomware, DDoS, malware, phishing. If you don't know what those mean, you're not alone. But if you aren't protected against those cybersecurity attacks, then your business is at risk. Don't leave your data or your business vulnerable. Get Digicel Business Protect. Simpler, smarter cybersecurity. Visit our website, www.digicelbusiness.com to request a callback or call us now on 623-2499.
Workforce Opportunities and Residency Cayman are reminding customers that applications must be completed in full or they will not be accepted. In efforts to improve customer service and processing time, only fully completed applications will be accepted. Customers are responsible for providing the required information for the application to be processed and are encouraged to review the application checklist before submission. For guidance, visit www.worc.ky.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hello, welcome back, and thank you very, very much for joining us. And in the studio, Mr. Leonard Dilbert, I think through your willingness to share with us, maybe we'll have a public, as our caller last reminded us, these town hall moments where we as a community start to appreciate the need for public interaction and discourse. And the use of poetry, like the arts, sculpture, painting, a song. It can make us reflect, but it can also record something.
Yeah. Well, yes, but to go back to my comment to the last but one, in terms of the origins of poetry as a spoken art, that's a good tie-in for establishing the fact that one of the things that poetry opens up is that kind of public discourse, because of the fact that it contains the level of disturbance on a linguistic level that basically knocks us off balance. You may be trying to sort of figure out what it is that the person is getting at, but something is sort of digging at your consciousness. Something is disturbing your sort of cognitive grasp of things. You're off balance enough that you want to regain your balance. You're trying to reach out for, well, what information do I have that can stabilize me again? And that challenge is creates the opening for sensible discourse. Right? Well, what is your question? What is it that you want to know about? And that, like any public discourse, can go in any kind of direction thereafter. And I'd spoken last time about the role of the poet as legislator, which I want to come back to in a minute, but I'm anxious, given the time, to read another piece. And, sorry, this reads like a sort of personal manifesto type thing, which I do from time to time. But it is, I suppose, up to the reader to see whether they hear it that way or not. The title of it might suggest that is how it should be read, but there's a lot of different stuff going on in there. It's just called The Promise. The Promise. I made the promise at midnight. Yeah, I know. Dark arts and all of that. Obia haters. Baloney. Don't you just want, when you promise, that your voice will not be just another white scud of froth sound peaking the millionth wave somewhere in that great ocean sea? No, you wouldn't, would you? So it was a midnight. From inside my sober shell, too. I'm going all the way here, no mistake. No, you heard right. It's like when Soja Crab and family find the forgotten long mango tree ripening, fruit all over the ground, golden orange with occasional purple tinges. In the hot, humid shade, in full shroud of the leaf canopy. All through the gloom, heat and a sweet sweat from the mangoes rising. Soba and company, digging in, pigging out. You got to mind because Soba and them have several appetites, not promising to benefit anyone in soul or body, including them. Appetites are their own reason for being. Appetites validate their own satisfactions. It matters not if you approve or pursue. And yet, if no appetite has ever overruled you, have you ever really fully lived? To know right living, right thinking, must we not know the wrong? Soba about to confess. He confessing. Soba going all out. Wants to know why one should expect anything. The provisional nature of satisfaction, for one. The elusive, even impossible consensus concerning the word. Would you really expect one word, one tongue, one opinion, one dissertation in Babylon? In Babylon? We have gone that deep, deep as ancestral bones, even ocean deep, to what is of and belonging to the collective, those 10,000 Middle Passage skeletons, 10,000 tons of skeletons on the sea bottom. Oh, the tortured ones, each and all of them, of this, the common inheritance of all humanity. Soba and I at one, we say, let a word be spoken, even though Babylon will not hear, even though so many have stopped up their ears. The cricket will not stop rubbing the violin in his legs, so long as there's a rock to shelter under. Nightingale will not stop singing until there is no tree for her to perch on the tip-top of. Wherefore will they assail thee for the sugar cane, juicy for the nutty almond kernels, assail on every side to collate, to bejewel such memories? Isn't it right instead that I should help untangle some of the thought knots, and sober, resist the sleeping sickness? You don't know where to start with that one?
No, I do. I
do. Okay,
but
jump right in.
No, let me step back and be mindful that as much as this is a public discourse,
yes.
it is a public
yes.
discourse.
Mm-hmm.
What was the impetus for that?
The impetus for that, God knows.
Yeah.
I don't recall any specific circumstantial sort of context or anything like that. I can tell you what, if I was unpacking this, this would be a very full suitcase.
Yeah.
One of the themes underlying it, I suppose the main theme underlying it is sort of dance around some of the same things that Mr. Loxer is referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the difficulty of making that sort of transition from the traditional to elsewhere,
mm-hmm.
wherever the future is going to take you, sort of thing. But it's trying to do that in a way that places some of our common heritage experiences
mm-hmm.
in a much broader context,
mm-hmm.
and part of that context being referencing of things that we tend not to embrace too readily
mm-hmm.
within our sense of heritage. And I'll leave the listener to figure out where to apply those comments.
Mm.
But there is, alongside that, of course, another pattern of things that is referencing the difficulties of really coming to grips with final answers on things and being too satisfied with the answers that you find,
mm-hmm.
and the challenges that arise if you are too anxious to do that and miss some of the cues that you should be paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
I know that most people have a lot of difficulty with the bit of the tradition I was saying that we don't tend to include in our heritage. When I refer to the 10,000 Middle Passage skeletons,
mm-hmm.
or 10,000 tons of skeletons,
mm-hmm.
the whole terminology of the Middle Passage and all that is not something that is identifiable in our traditional canon at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually historical and relatively recent piece of terminology, and its value in the historical explanation for what they call African chattel slavery is itself a relatively recent phenomenon, but it is a useful shorthand for referencing the whole history
mm-hmm.
of that particular phenomenon in a way that hopefully no human being alive can have a problem with.
Mm.
The idea that is a shameful episode in human history is something that nobody should have a problem with.
Yeah.
But we do have problems with it.
Mm.
We have problems, and I think it stems from a fear that if you start that discussion, it's like starting a fire.
Yeah.
And there's no way of controlling.
Open up Pandora's box almost. Yeah.
The Pandora's box thing, yes.
Mm.
And personally, I think that there's at least an equal and opposite danger, and that is the danger of what I refer to as the poison in your blood that remains when you don't confront and find truthful ways of confronting things that are part of your reality, that in fact have contributed to shaping who you are and how you are.
Yeah.
And yet you in effect are denying that is the case. And for the danger is particularly potent for our younger population,
mm-hmm.
who are exposed to these things in ways that we wouldn't even have dreamed of growing up ourselves. But having had that exposure, then look at themselves here and say, well, why are these people not telling me this?
Mm.
Or why are they telling me that? And they find themselves distrusting their own culture, their own community, their own leadership.
Yeah.
And the slide from that to not believing in it, to casting it off altogether, I say, well, it's all a bunch of lies.
Yeah.
There's nothing there for me to hold on to. That's one aspect of the problematic outcome, I think, that comes behind that approach. So I think it's something that we have to have more open discourse about.
We do have a caller, and before I comment, let's just take this call. Welcome, good afternoon, and thank you for calling.
Good afternoon to you again, gentlemen.
Oh, welcome back again.
Afternoon again.
Thank you. You did say you were going to read one, and it'd be interesting to hear my thoughts. And my first word would be Sila, out of the Bible song. My good Almighty, listen, sir. While I saw that was so powerful.
Thank you.
To hear your thoughts behind what you shared.
Yes.
And bringing to light, some of the things, some of the elements, some of the pieces in the midst of it, and even the thought process behind why certain things are used.
Yes.
What I found was that's interesting is I could tell you what that poem did using your words a while ago that says it was digging at you and digging at the soul and stirring something in you. The elements that I heard were powerful and actually brought me home. And so it's interesting that you talked about the 10,000 skeletons and the reference that's made historically to the passage. But for me, so I almost want to ask the question. You can answer it afterwards so I can finish the thought. The question is, can a poem have dual meaning, and can it hit people in different ways?
Of course.
So my mind immediately went to me being in primary school, and which wasn't that very long ago, and the population only being about, I remember being in primary school and they tell us the population was a little bit over 13,000 or something at that time. And so I heard Middle Passage, I heard, the generation that was before me and what they stood for. I heard the elements of the local piece talking about the mangoes that we can relate to, and then sort of the provocative stirring that you did, and what it spoke to me about is about what we as Caymanians, that is, are facing in a broader sense, and all that entails. And I love how you did it in a third party where you spoke to I ain't drunken man, because oftentimes so many of us are critical of others that take a path that are different or find themselves in vices, and it means that they have no worth. And I love how you were able to bring that part, and even if that's not what your mind, that's what I heard.
That's what you heard.
I heard that, and I just want to say Sila.
Thank you.
Sila.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. I mean, listening.
All right.
Thanks. This is what I appreciate with the caller, and with that sort of direction with Susan, you're inviting the pilots that came on airways, coming in from the BRAC to break in about 3 minutes before we take the break. So we got a little circling there, the runway, before we come in for landing.
So we have 3 minutes?
Before the next break. 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
2 minutes and 45 seconds.
I'll see if I can take it.
I could read a piece of prose in that time.
Yeah, man.
Well, I wanted to speak again about the poets as legislators, and I suppose I will read this quickly and see how much of it sticks. Implicit in the poem is the validation of one's dream life, the freedom to imagine, even when there may not be permission to speak freely. And I have a little phrase that I like to use myself. I'm not asking for permission to say it, and I'm not asking for forgiveness for having said it. Poetic speech, direct to the hearts and minds of people, language that stirs deep feelings and prompts the making of cognitive connections, both possible in keeping with and apart from the notion of speaking truth to power, as we might now say. Such deep stirring up can be an implicit challenge to inner status quo. The poet is the one who may have you asking yourself, what is your dream? What do you yearn for in your life? The questions the ruler ought to occasion, but dare not. So when I celebrate the Nightingale song or the choral's transmutations, It treasures them, valorizes them, and so raises the prospect of our protecting our ongoing relationship with them. And that speaks to the power that poetry can have in relation to our regard for the natural world. When in a metaphorical construction we make seemingly unlikely connections, we dare the reader to reimagine their given world, to look again at what may have been taken for granted, to realize even that it's they themselves who are taken for granted. And that is the sort of prompt for the action to say, maybe this is not the way my life ought to be.
As we go into the break, we have a listener who asked in relation to the poem you read just. It says, will Mr. Dilbert consider changing the title of that poem to Reparations?
Mr. Dilbert will consider.
Kind of like when a motion before the State Assembly, when the government considers.
Yes, we will consider.
All right, let's take that break, and when we come back, would you accept the invitation to remain with us? Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Subway's giving you flavor around the clock with the new Chicken Squad sandwich options. Try the classic chicken and bacon ranch, the sweet and savory barbecue chicken, or the chicken cordon bleu. 3 new appetizing and delicious sub options that you can also make into a wrap. The Chicken Squad is available at Subway for only a limited time. Subway, giving you something to cluck about.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Important customer notice. BAF Insurance would like to advise their valued clients that the BAF Insurance office on Dorsey Drive Industrial Park will be closed on Friday, 17th June at 3 p.m. for staff training. BAF Insurance will resume normal business hours at 8:30 a.m. on Monday, June 20th. For more information, call 814-2545 or visit mybafsolutions.com. Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
As the community continues to take precautions from COVID-19, it is important to stay prepared for other disasters now that we're in the hurricane season. Here are some post-hurricane safety tips from the Department of Environmental Health. Cistern water designated for the purposes of drinking, cooking, and bathing must be disinfected before use after a hurricane. Simply leave the water for 1 minute after it begins to boil, or to disinfect with bleach, add 3 ounces of chlorine bleach to every 1,000 gallons of water. A residual bleach smell is an indicator that the water has been properly disinfected. For full guidance on post-hurricane safety tips, visit www.deh.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon to all and Sunday alike, and trust. I should ask Ms. Susan, for those of you who have been in their studio would know that the vista through these 1 foot thick concrete padded walls, is only a testament to the creative imagination as to what lies beyond. So there are many a day, as I welcome my guest, Mr. Leonard Dilbert, where I sit here and I would allow myself to cast my mind up to Bacchus. And although, as you can see, the beautiful, aesthetic that we have on the wall, is nowhere near reminiscent of what, the cooling breezes, of Bacchus would be like. But you have to, because it takes the mind away to a space that allows you to be not only pensive and reflective, but to be productive. So, is it raining on the outside, Miss Susan? Is it raining? Is it raining? She says she's not sure. She said, here's the forecast. Overcast, but not raining.
Okay.
I want to see that too.
Sour dust.
Yeah, but she's promising more rain to come, she said.
Okay.
When? Oh, she said 3:01.
3:01. Okay. I'll be out here.
But your use of poetry and as you say, you're practicing poet. And I think that it is important that we have these opportunities, that we have people like you who exercise the discipline. But I'm also mindful that we only appreciate something long after, and sometimes too long after. With the opportunity we have now, there are some, thankfully, who are sitting listening going, okay, what are you talking about now? Oh, and they'll pick up on it. And then there are others who will go back and reflect. And suddenly there are some who, because of the sort of priorities and imposed obligations, will not, pay it any mind.
You're very kind. There's a whole other category of people, right? who are dismissive, not for any of those good reasons, but simply because of a more bigoted point of view, as the old people used to say. They don't have the tolerance for it, and they, in some cases, will consider it to be illegitimate discourse. It's rubbish. It's not something that anybody should be listening to. It doesn't make any sense, etc., etc. Lots of ways of condemning things that you either don't understand or you don't want to understand.
But therein lies, I think, the failure on our part. And I know, trust me, it's a challenge sometimes for us as a young person to listen to the wisdom of the older, much wiser head, because we're impatient. We have this notion of instant gratification. A good friend earlier today, talked about the swipe generation and our unwillingness. Some would say inability almost. Hopefully it's not there yet. We're not paying attention to anything. Right?
Yeah, the challenge, I mean, it's always an interesting discussion, the sort of intergenerational discussion and changes between them. To my mind, the challenge is with both parties, on both sides of the spectrum, or on all the sides of the spectrum. If you're dealing with several generations at once, we are fortunate enough to still have great grandparents and that sort of thing around among us. Enough people who are living long enough and healthily enough that you could say the challenge extends to them too. But the challenge extends to all of us, and I suppose it's more of a chain than anything, in that the more steps down the chain, or the more links down the chain that you follow, the more challenging it becomes, the more extreme the generation gap becomes. And that doesn't do away with the fact that there's an obligation on both sides of that equation to make efforts to reach the other. And I find it difficult to be patient with the persons who are more prepared to sort of blame one side of the equation than the other, because it seems to me that both have responsibility. Both the young people who seem to be often doing their own thing and have no regard whatsoever for what came before them, etc., and those who are looking at them and saying, well, why don't you? Why don't you value this? Why don't you pay attention to that? Perhaps they don't pay attention because we haven't caused them to pay attention. We haven't given them any reason to pay attention. Perhaps they're busy learning other things that we might need to know ourselves in order to survive, and not really how to rely on them as much as we otherwise would, etc. There's a lot in that whole to be unpacked in that whole discourse, but that's my bottom line to it, that both sides have to make efforts to come somewhere in the middle.
I'm concerned that there's a growing disconnect. And increasingly, when I look at what's transpiring now, your poem easily resonates with many of us. The language, the imagery, and the life. And then there are some, and I speak in with the greatest respect to Caymanians, right? Because of our age and our exposure, probably have no clue the references. And Friedman talks about, flattened world. The more of us that are interconnected globally, the more I wonder through social media, like the young people will no longer gravitate, identify, or associate with what is distinctively their own.
But you're very much singing my song, singing from my same song sheet. Those young people have not been told, have not been shown the things that we're talking about. Right? Not in a way that they understand the value of them, understand that they are opening, that is the key to open a door to themselves in ways that they currently have no other perception of. Because where they come from, so to speak, and the people that, those young people for the most part, love their families, right? And they will find it to be a revelation if they were to gain an understanding about their families that casts a light on that family member that they never saw them in before at all. I think there's a huge job to be done in that sense. I used to tell persons that I worked with in the government administration building / glass house that we are in acute danger of Caymanian culture disappearing off the face of the earth. Right? I mean, literally gone, forgotten. If we don't want that to happen, if we think there's anything of sufficient value that human beings around the world could benefit from knowing the things that we know about ourselves, whether that is to do with skills that we developed as persons in an isolated place with very little technology, very little in the way of tools and support and supply lines of things, etc., but who managed to not only create homes for ourselves, make a living for ourselves, but create a culture around it that anyone of a certain age understands the ingenuity, the genius involved in doing that. If you were not steeped in that, then you have no access to it. You have no way of knowing that that is part of your reality, part of what formed you. One of the things that I think makes a young person understand their own potential, their own possible power, is when they come to understand that where I come from, these powerful people. Right? What we were able to make of ourselves in these straitened circumstances is second to none. Right? Our stewardship of the environment alone. And I speak of that even knowing that there are contradictions and everything. Like, we didn't steward the wild turtles particularly well, right? Because we just kind of kept going at them, further and further afield until we had to start farming them, right? But having said that, there are many other examples to the contrary. And our way of using the silver thatch, for argument's sake, you don't cut the thatch until it's the full moon, and you only cut so many because they have to keep growing in order for you to be able to continue making. Right?
All right. We have a quick break, Mr. Gilbert. When we come back, please rejoin us.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
At its June 7th meeting, Cayman's leaders approved supplementary funding to increase tertiary care at various local and overseas institutions by $8 million, a $474,000 increase for other health and cultural program assistance, and a $3.2 million increase for medical care of indigents. Cabinet also approved the purchase of 2 plots of land in Little Cayman and 1 in East End to improve public access to the seashore. You can find the full summary of Cabinet meetings online at gov.ky. In international news, the family of Dom Phillips says they are heartbroken after a suspect confessed to burying the bodies of the missing British journalist and the indigenous expert Bruno Pereira in Brazil. In a statement, they thanked those who helped search for the men in a remote and dangerous region of the Amazon. They also praised the courageous lives and important work of the pair who covered the lives of indigenous groups. Phillips, 57, Pereira, 41, were first reported missing on June 5th. Kevin Spacey strenuously denies allegations of sexual assault, his lawyers said Thursday, as the Oscar-winning actor appeared in a London court to face 5 charges of offences against 3 men. Photographers and television camera crews thronged Spacey, 62, as he arrived at London's Westminster Magistrates Court for the preliminary hearing, walking into court accompanied by members of his legal team and 2 police officers. Spacey sat in the glass-fronted dock during the half-hour hearing, standing to give his full name, as well as his birth date and a London address. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
We wanna go and dally, backyard.
So you hear the joke about the goat that walk into the yard?
No, tell me now.
I hear it became brunch at Backyard.
The Sunday Funday Caribbean brunch at Backyard. Non-stop food, only $45 for adults and $20 for children under 12. With them store prices, only an ox would miss this because oxtail on the menu too, along with eggs, bacon, callaloo, jerk chicken, and more. Oh, and the curry goat.
Backyard, non-stop food, Sunday Funday Caribbean brunch. Book your table now, 746-4603.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
With Logic, you get more things you do want, like faster fiber internet, more TV, entertainment, and better customer service. And you get less of the things you don't want, like waiting, boredom, and disappointment. More of the good, less of the bad. It just makes sense. Or should I say, it's logical. See what I did there? Call us or go to logic.ky to find out how you could be getting way more of what's good.
On a Listen to This, the Jubilee festivities continue with Lukia. Celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and Mango Season. On Saturday, 18th of June, the Cayman Islands National Museum is hosting a fun, interactive event full of Caymanian cuisine, entertainment, shopping, and free museum tours. And don't forget about the mangoes with the annual mango peeling and eating competition.
What are you doing with that big Julie mango in your hand now? I want a piece. No!
The Queen's Platinum Jubilee continues with Mango Season at the museum, Saturday, 18th of June. For more details, visit museum.ky. The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Your Yesteryear Musical on Breeze Radio, Saturday evening at 8 o'clock, 105.3 FM in Grand Cayman and 91.9 FM in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Your Yesteryear Musical, a grand selection of music from yesteryear. And of course, Sunday being Father's Day, much of the music on Your Yesteryear Musicals program on this Saturday will revolve around fathers.
It's Cash Whiz K-Man Kids Got Talent Show
2022.
Calling all kids 11 to 17 years to showcase their God-given talent and win cash and prizes. Registration ends June 18 and forms are available at your schools in Cash Whiz K-Man. Limited space, so register now. Cash Whiz K-Man Kids Got Talent
2022.
Call for more information 321-7274 or 927-6352.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. And thanks to Delenga Dilbert for sitting with us. And I think through the arts, but poetry in particular, and whether it's the sonnet or this is the psalmist, whether it's the song of the Calypsonian, I think if we were to listen to the words, we could draw great import. But where is the balance between the technical skill, writing the thing, the skill with reading and interpreting, analyzing, and then commenting on it? Or should it be that we're just willing? I mean, our history is still oral. And as you said, poetry was meant to be initially verbal, right? And I think that's where the challenge with the Cayman parlance sometimes comes in, where we can say the word, but how is that word spelled? And even that word, honor, for instance, okay, we know it's African in origin. Some would probably tell us the specific part. But the honor is said one way in one district and said another way in another district, but probably spelled completely different as well.
Well, that would be the challenge, right? Among other things. And as I say, in spite of our small size, we have the sea between us and Cayman Brac, and then again Little Cayman. And that is a little bit more understandable, easy to explain, the differences in the way that Brackers speak compared to how people speak in Grand Cayman. But even on Grand Cayman, from one district to the other, you'll hear differences. And the historical explanation for that, as I understand it, goes back to the relative isolation of persons from one another in the individual districts. And those speech patterns and everything else being developed within those isolated communities. So you learn to speak the way that people in your community spoke before you. Right? Take an image of mother's milk, as they say. But so it's among the challenges we will have to face. But it's a wonderful challenge to have. The difference between confronting those kinds of challenges and doing what we're doing now, which is totally ignoring it pretty much, except for things that I find really annoying, like assuming these sorts of voices that quite frankly make us sound a bit idiotic. And I hear it, unfortunately, I hear it on Radio Cayman, I hear it on other radio stations too, right? People speaking in a way that is really more of a caricature of the way Caymanians speak than it is an actual representation of it. And fine if you're really trying to make a joke or whatever, but if you are really conveying that as to be taken seriously as representing the way that Caymanians speak, then it's a bit insulting. And more than that, the difficulty it creates is that it's another layer to chop through in order to get to what the real speech pattern is, if you will. And I say the real speech pattern with some hesitation, in that speech patterns are changing all the time. It's in the nature of speech that it will change depending on what people are exposed to and so on. And Lord knows we are exposed to a lot. And and so it's bound to happen that our speech patterns would change. But that is not really the issue. The issue isn't about that. The issue is, are we willing to put effort into really coming to an understanding of what our speech patterns were to begin with historically. At a point in time where you could say, well, you can isolate this as being a more or less fully developed form of the way that Caymanian speaks already. That is a piece of work that desperately needs doing. If we have any seriousness at all about the survival of our own culture, about the value of our own culture, about the fact that, in my mind, the things that Caymanian culture represents, there are things in there that we can be proud of, should be proud of, that could stand up anywhere in the world. But I am not hearing that approach being taken by our public leadership. I'm not seeing the seriousness of intent to really figure out all that we need to figure out about where we came from and what that was like, and what it suggests about where we may be able to go. I'm not seeing that at all, I'm afraid. And that is an extreme disappointment, to say the least. It's galling, actually.
Yeah. But as I listen to you, I'm asking myself, my earlier comment when the guy, he called for us and how am I doing? I say, I look in the mirror and I love myself. I did that consciously and deliberately, because if what's the scripture? You got to love yourself, right? You have to have a love for you to love others. You got to know what love is to give love. And it's not arrogance. It's not even confidence. It's
not much love in arrogance.
No, exactly, exactly, right. And if you don't, I think we have this view of ourselves that we make self-effacing comments often, and I'm prone to do that as well. Part of a mask and a jest.
Yes, but it is also the fact that is something that you find repeating itself suggests to me that it's a linguistic tool available in the culture that people choose to use in certain circumstances, and there are very complex linguistic skills in the way that Caymanians use language.
Yeah.
And many people who are not acquainted with the way that we speak will hear things being said and not be able to penetrate what is intended.
Yeah.
And I think that is a testament to the skill involved and the peculiarity of it.
Yeah.
But I want to hasten to read something else.
Yes, please.
Because it seems to me that the talking about the thing is of value, but the thing itself is of value as well. And you have to have the thing itself in order to have it to talk about.
Not just esoteric.
Yeah. So I'm going to read two more things. One that is perhaps goes some way towards the kind of thing that you were just talking about, that to do with the sort of personal testimonial sort of situation, and you just mentioned the Psalms, and there's a way in which this kind of stylistic approach in this piece is a bit reminiscent of the psalmist. I don't know who else will agree when they hear it, but a lot of King David's psalms are confessions, right? and pleas for forgiveness, because David was not such a nice guy all the time. Yeah, he got up to some mischief.
You mean kind, man.
Anyway, I've tentatively called this a fragment from Confessions.
Okay.
Enter the chamber here with me, as one entering a shrine. Inertia, entropy, all that has no hold here. Neither ordinary gravity. Indeed, a force heavier than gravity may suddenly magnetize the clod under your feet, and whoop! Before you know it, you've sunk through the floor. You want Remedios Varos to climb in the rocketing shuttle, down through the earth with you. You expect to switch carriages to join Leonora Carrington. You don't know when you became like a cloud over open sea. You have a nature of water, forming and unforming constantly. You're aqueous, melting, mercurial, constantly colliding with, bucking confinement. Monkey-minded, red, golden, golden red monkey-minded. All my friends don't know that they may as well forgive me in advance. I'll be doing that daedal dance with the unforgivable. I'll be melting the icebergs, start the floods, licking the feet of the mountains. Oh, the liquid heat from my heart. Once I was accused of being a man with 1,000 faces. All said and done, this is inviting you to come see me. Come listen, since you can't believe all you see. What made this ghost out of me? To live in a land of whited sepulchres? How might one otherwise be? What with this imagination? What with these inchoate desires, these passions, these mirages, weather the wattage of full afternoon sun on the seawater? What with being electric like a lightning bolt? Don't try to hold on to it. Any angel mother would teach an angel baby about not touching, not holding the lightning. I of the golden red monkey mind, I would think so too. Would I? How could I not aspire to the hard and fast? Hard and fast, so be it, being fastened too, with a hard belief for a binding.
You see, in listening to you, it's not, I step back for a second, it's not just my deference for what you do or my love and respect for who you are. But I'm wondering again, if we are, as we're looking at today, pouring rain in some quarters, told it's nice downpour in the west. I'm wondering if we are taking time to take stock of where we are. You referenced 2 weeks ago that the member bank, I know it has a official title. Those voices will never be heard again. What they say, what they reflected, will forever. This is what we have. And if the Caymanian identity, the culture, the ethos, or history or heritage, we are at risk of it being lost. Right? I'm asking consciously whether it's deliberate, inadvertent, or otherwise. Is there a social engineering?
Imponderable question. I in a way I don't know, and in a way I don't care. Okay. What I care about is it's a fact that neglect is obvious to anyone who cares a look. We, not to say that there aren't things being done in the visual arts. We have probably more attention being paid and more progress being made in terms of the opening up of the field for and development of skills and means of expression. I don't think there's the same thing can be said much wider than that. There's some work in music, I suppose, that is happening as well. But I know that there are persons out there who are practicing, who are developing skills, and that there is potential there for development, but it is not happening. The invitation for that, the support systems for that, the platform for it are not being brought into the public realm where people know this is a place that I can be, this is a place I can become the thing that I could possibly become.
It is, as I listen to you, and I am increasingly mindful to hold my space and certain things, and to ensure that if it appears to be adamant and dogmatic and unforgiving, it's because I am so convinced of that thing. I give us an example: the way we speak, the word "barkas" in Bodamanu, to me, for it to be called anything else is just inflammatory. It's just repugnant, right? But what's even worse is when people who know better, who are 30 and 40 years my senior, feel likewise. But we refuse as a people to say, listen, that sign, that roundabout needs to be taken down and changed. But nobody's willing to do anything about it.
Actually, we're doing the opposite. We're actually allowing signs we put up that are either incorrect and misleading in terms of how it would have been said or represented in the first instance, or it actually changes the name of things, which is bizarre,
right,
to say the least.
And when we say the thing, instead of drawing alongside to correct it, we castigate the person for highlighting it. Now, I would imagine that if a print and or other sort of media makes a statement, as soon as they can, they would be conscious and quick to say, oops, here's a reprint, and we want to correct that. A book usually is edited for many things, not just accuracy, but that word is spelled this way. Why is it that in the Cayman context, the one person that says something and sticks the head up gets the, so...
Well, yeah, I mean, I've written quite a lot and said quite a lot about the fact that we like to speak about and trumpet our democratic systems and so on, and our constitutional rights and all this, but in actual practice, we don't do a terribly good job of facilitating public discourse. There's there are many more constraints around public discourse than we like to say, and some of it is forgivable in that it, I think, has deep roots in when we were an even smaller society than we are now, and there is a necessity in small social settings to impose a variety of controls over people's behavior, even the way that they speak, the way that they represent themselves. And this is how cultures survive. Right? They have limitations, restrictions, they have rules about how things are done or not done, and that's understandable. But if you layer on top of that all sorts of sophisticated machinery like written constitutions and so on, then the onus is on you to say, well, how do you bring into this the spirit of...
Not just the letter and intent, but the spirit, right? But is that problem compounded when we refuse to ensure that our own people are in that position, right? And it stems across...
It can be. It need not necessarily be so. I mean, people can come here and how real sympathy with and be very supportive of our own heritage, etc., and get behind it. I mean, the former head of the same archive, Philip Hedley, I would have said the late Philip Hedley, had a lot of respect for Philip, and I think he genuinely felt that this culture had to be respected for what it was, and ways and means had to be found to bring the materials, the raw materials that were available in archival form, and make them available to people so they could see more of the institutional roots, at least, of the culture. But so that is quite possible. And I think there's a real danger of xenophobic thinking, as you referred to early on. It's very easy to fall into that if you're in a situation where you feel as if your back against the wall already. Right? The appeal can come from persons who themselves don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. They have their own best interests at heart. No, their own interest in you is getting you to support them in doing what they do. So they will manipulate and do all sorts of things, all manner of evil, in order to get you on their side, so to speak. Do we have time for one quick one?
Would you please?
Okay.
Yeah.
I call this one the medal.
Yeah.
And I never hear the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry this year only will be struck in platinum at the Royal Mint. And wait now, the best part, has been awarded to a poet from the OTs. No, wait. Hold the envelope. It says islands. It says me. Quick, take my picture. Post me. Duplicate my tongue on the 3D printer. Measure, allowing for age, all the firstborn sons and daughters for their industrial potential. We want encyclopedic efforts in this and celebrations. Thank you.
I'm hoping that as people take time. Today's Thursday, and for some of us, our schedules are so hectic that we're glad that tomorrow will represent Friday. For some, it'll be Friday? You mean I don't have 3 more days to get through? And I understand that, right? But if we don't celebrate who we are, what we are, if we don't respect and value, then I think that tomorrow, is not just a promise; it's going to be a foregone conclusion. Right?
It'll be a poorer experience.
And we will, in fact, yeah. But thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me again.
2 weeks hence?
And we look forward to 2 weeks hence.
Well, I prefer to say that through the celebration of those around us, we can enjoy what life has to offer. And if you come to the table offering up grace and being, willing to give thanks, draw alongside your brothers and sisters and respect and value who they are, you may find yourself, just much more enriched.
Oh, we have riches around us all the time and we don't pay attention.
And we don't pay attention. To my good friend who reminds me to value the true things in life. Perhaps one day I might be able to say that. Tomorrow, please join us. We have an interesting discussion with Katina Anglin. Is expected to be our guest. I'll try not to get my hair wet as I dash through the rain, but hey, we'll see what happens. Until then, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Six years.
3 beloved isles.
1 beloved station, Radio Cayman.